Hi guys, my name is Jaxon Roberts and I'm a photographer and filmmaker from Western Australia. I've spent the past 6 years capturing the natural world through my lens, which has developed into my own unique style of photography. In this video, I'm going to help you understand the most important things to know when it comes to nature photography. From what makes a good nature shot to the different camera settings and basic equipment required. I'll also be talking through how I plan, capture and edit my images to showcase the uniqueness of the outdoors. So without further ado, let's get into it. Firstly, let's start with a bit about nature photography and what makes it so special and unique. Nature is unpredictable. From wild and curious animals making surprise appearances in the wild, to stunning sunsets that brighten up the landscape, there is an infinite amount of stories to be told. Every photo taken in nature is so special and unique due to the constant changing elements, such as lighting, weather, and wildlife. So starting with the basics, how do you take nature photos? When shooting outdoors in nature, there are a lot of things to keep in mind. Challenging weather conditions, constantly changing lighting, and unpredictable wildlife. All of these difficulties can be made easier just by planning ahead. Here's a few important things that I take notes on before visiting a location. Sunrise and sunset, also known as the golden hour, is the best time to shoot to achieve the most beautiful images. The soft light at these hours always looks great. Be prepared to wake up earlier than usual to get the perfect shot at sunrise. Or be prepared to hike in the dark after a sunset shoot. Ask yourself which direction looks the best for different lighting. Some scenes look better when the sun is shining directly on the landscape, but others look nicer when the sun is creating a more backlit effect. Depending on where you're going, you may need to pack lighter for big hikes. But if you have a car, you can take as much gear as possible. Personally, I like to take at least 3 different lenses with me at all times. It is also very important to take spare batteries, tripods, and memory cards with you at all times. The season can dramatically change what the landscape looks like. For example, winter colors can create a drastically different look in comparison to summer. The sun can change different directions throughout different seasons, so it is best to research and find out which way the sun will be facing at this time of year. For example, mountains can be in complete shadow in winter, but then in summer they can be completely lit up. Different weather conditions can make your photos stand out, but can also ruin them. Being prepared for the approaching weather can help a lot. Will it be cloudy, clear skies, or even snowing? Ask yourself, which is the safest way to travel to your desired destination? Traveling on marked trails is always best. Most importantly, leave the location as pristine as you found it when you first arrived. We are so lucky to have an amazing world to discover, so let's not ruin it. Landscape photography may seem simple at first, but it is still very important to understand the right settings and the gear that is required to take the best photos possible. As I mentioned before, it is best to carry at least 3 different lenses with you if possible. Firstly, a wide lens. Anything around the 16mm mark is perfect. Having a wide lens like this means you're able to capture such a large field of view and you won't have to crop or cut out important parts of an image. Secondly, a 24-70 is a great midway lens to carry with you. With this lens, it is wide enough to capture a good landscape shot, but also if you zoom into the 70mm mark, you can experiment with new perspectives. Lastly is a telephoto lens, such as a 70-200. By using a large focal length, you are able to capture abstract and unique scenes. One of my favorite times to use a telephoto lens is when shooting mountains in the distance. Also, while on the topic of gear, tripods are an essential. This allows you to set a timer and use a slower shutter speed if the scene is too dark. This takes us on to the next point. Let's start with shutter speed. It is best to keep your shutter speed as fast as possible if you can. For example, 1/2000. This allows for a sharper image if there is any camera movement. If you need to, you can slow the shutter speed down a lot more with landscape photography because usually there is not much movement in the scene. But this is where a tripod comes in handy. Make sure when your camera is on the tripod, you set a timer. This will avoid any movement as you press the trigger. Now you can set the shutter speed a lot slower, for example, a 25th of a second. Now moving on to aperture or f-stop. My rule for landscape photography is to set my aperture between f5.6 and f10. This means that most of the scene will be in focus, but also keep in mind that this will make the image darker, so make sure you get the correct exposure with your shutter speed or ISO. Now the last important setting is ISO. ISO refers to the sensitivity of your camera's sensor. The more you increase your ISO, the brighter your image will be, but in return, it will produce more noise and grain in the image. I always keep my ISO set to 100 or 200 to achieve a cleaner image. Every camera sensor is different when it comes to deciding the correct ISO to use, so it is best to research your specific camera. Personally, the maximum I push my ISO is 3200. Anything above this creates a little bit too much noise, but you can also remove the noise with Adobe Lightroom. While on the topic of correct settings and exposure, it is important to remember that lighting is constantly changing while out in nature. It is also best to underexpose an image rather than overexpose it. Natural light is one of the most beautiful elements when you use it to your advantage. Be prepared for which way the sun will rise or set, and plan which direction you want to shoot. Shooting towards the sun will give a glowing backlit effect, which looks nice before the sun gets too harsh. Shooting away from the sun can give you dramatic shadows and make the colors pop a lot more in the landscape. You also need to be ready to move positions quickly because the lighting can change within a few minutes. It's easy to get distracted and overwhelmed when shooting nature photos, so it is best to practice your technical skills enough so you're confident to change settings quickly as the lighting changes. My personal favorite part of nature photography is wildlife. Unpredictable, curious, and extremely unique are some of the reasons that animals are so special to capture. Every creature has a story to be told, and if you're in the right place at the right time, you can capture their moment perfectly in time. While animals can be difficult to photograph, the results are always the most rewarding. Being prepared is very important to ensure that you can capture the amazing moments. Here's just a few tips to help out. Being familiar and well experienced with your camera settings means that if some wildlife surprises you, you're ready to change positions and settings without getting a blurry image. Most of the time, I make sure my shutter speed is as fast as possible, for example, a 1/2000, but if the area is too dark, you may have to slow your shutter speed down. If your shutter speed goes below 1/150th of a second, the image will start to get blurry with the movement of the camera or the subject. My rule is to set the shutter speed to 250th of a second, just to be safe. Then from there, I increase the ISO to brighten up the image. Use a telephoto lens. This means you can keep a large distance between you and the animal and remain undetected. My favorite telephoto lens to take around with me is a 70-200, but ideally, if you are wanting to achieve better results, you can invest in a 100 to 400mm lens. Finding your own unique style in nature can be quite challenging, especially in popular places. Often you can travel to a place you've seen all over Instagram, but struggle to find your own unique perspective. Take your time to explore the area. Find different angles, use different lenses, and use a drone to see the world from a completely new perspective. Giving yourself more time at a location will allow more of a chance for you to get creative and explore more ideas. These are my best tips to stand out and create unique images. Drones can create unlimited perspectives and different angles with the freedom of flight. You are able to fly high and see the world from a bird's point of view, or low over the water without getting wet. You can use almost any framing you can think of because you are not restricted by walking on the ground to get your angles. With a drone, you are basically working in a three-dimensional space where you can place the camera wherever you want. Another way to stand out is to use a human subject in your images to help tell a story. When using a subject in nature photos, it is best to keep them small in frame so you don't take too much attention away from the beautiful landscape. There are so many ways a human subject can help make your nature photos unique. You can use different clothing options, different props, or different poses. With the power of Adobe Lightroom, we are able to bring a dull photo to life with the click of a button. This is why it's important to never delete images until you've tried editing them. I usually follow a few rules to make sure my images have a consistent feel to them. So jumping into Lightroom. Firstly, I add some contrast by bringing the highlights down, shadows up, whites up, and blacks slightly down. I then bring the texture and clarity down. Next, I take the vibrance down to around -20. Moving on to the tone curve, I usually form an S shape to make the tone soft and smooth. Now the hues are different for each image, but I usually make my greens a bit more yellow and the blues a bit more aqua. One of my favorite tools in Lightroom has to be the color grading wheels. I usually add a very small amount of blue into the midtones. This helps give my images a nice subtle blue hint. As you can see with this image, it's not over the top. You can still see the blue tones coming through. Well guys, I hope this tutorial on nature photography has given you a bit of an insight of how I capture my photos. The main things I focus on while taking photos outdoors is ensuring I use the correct settings and using natural lighting to my advantage. Aiming to take photos at golden hour is the most important tip to take away from all this. But if you can combine all these tips together, I can promise you will capture some amazing photos. The best thing you can do is get out in nature and practice. Remember, nature is unpredictable, and that is why it's so amazing to photograph. You never know what to expect. Thanks for watching.